And now, welcome back to Zombie Life.
Hey guys, James here again and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna give you some awesome tips for surviving the zombie apocalypse. Let's head out there. Alright, so one of the big things is that you always want to make sure you keep your space from zombies at all times. This will help you in all sorts of situations. If you aren't seen, keep your space, hug a wall and you'll be safe. But say you do attract a zombie, well, then you just need to make sure again, keep your space, back up, approach slowly, wait until they're in range, and then swing.
No.
Oh god. Someone help, quick, no.
Hey guys, James here again with another game review. This time we're talking about the open world zombie survival game, Project Zomboid. In Project Zomboid, or PZ for short, you create your own survivor and attempt to last as long as possible in a desolate, apocalyptic land, otherwise known as Kentucky. If I had to compare this game to other games, I'd say it's like if you combined RuneScape and The Sims, and then made it a zombie survival game. The game is actually a lot of fun and in many ways feels like a giant sandbox to explore, but as you might be able to tell from some of this footage, it can be a bit janky at times. But without further ado, let's dive into this review. In Project Zomboid, you play as a survivor in the initial stages of a zombie apocalypse. The initial outbreak takes place in a fictionalized version of Kentucky and actually takes inspiration from real-life areas. The world is completely open and also absolutely massive. I can't even imagine how many hours it would take to completely see everything the map has to offer. One of the cool things about PZ is the fact that it essentially acts as a sandbox for you to survive in, and that sandbox is highly customizable. You can change things from the amount of food in the world, to the weather, and even the nature of the zombies you run into. Having this level of customizability is also just great, as it really allows players to adjust the game to their liking and set it based on the type of story that they want to tell. Another great thing about the game is the fact that they have a bunch of Steam Workshop mods and a ton of different options available to increase the amount of content and improve the overall quality of life. Once you generate your world, you're then prompted to create your survivor. They provide you a number of templates to base your character off of, which take the form of jobs. Your characters will then be assigned different stats and skills based on the job that they used to hold before everything hit the fan. You can also elect to be unemployed and choose your own different skills and stats. They also offer a number of different positive and negative traits which affect how your character might behave in the real world. For example, a negative trait would have to be the disorganized trait, which reduces the amount of inventory space available to your character. Meanwhile, a positive trait would have to be cat's eyes, which allows you to have better vision in the dark. In order to balance these traits though, each one has a positive or a negative value associated with it. You're required to make sure you have at least 0 balance in your trait values as a way of preventing players from creating absolutely broken characters. The system is actually pretty fun too, as it really allows you to create awesome, but deeply flawed characters. I think another great thing about these characters is also just how attached you can actually get to some of them. While they might not always show much personality by themselves, it's hard not to start loving them as they survive longer and longer. I had this one character I'll never forget who was a farmer, but had the agoraphobic trait so that they would start panicking while outdoors. They also had the smoker trait and would get stressed if they didn't smoke for a while. Based on that, I think you might know what kind of a farm they were running.
Smoke weed every day.
Even then, this character somehow became one of my most successful, and I truly felt sad when they eventually died. Once your character is ready, you then spawn into one of the 4 starting zones, and bam, welcome to the zombie apocalypse. Loot and move quickly though, because zombies will likely be on your location very soon. Just something to note, the game is actually genuinely scary at times. You need to be very careful while navigating, and they'll often use jump scares and high-pitched horror movie hits to scare you. From here though, the game just really sets you free and there's really not much of an objective other than to survive. There's actually just so much to do, and honestly, I feel like I'm just skimming the surface of the possibilities of the game even after playing for 40 plus hours. You're gonna be running around a lot, looting a lot, fighting a lot, hiding a lot, reading a lot of books. It's honestly impossible to really list off all the possible things you can do in the game. Your main goal of course is to survive, and as part of that you need to develop a number of different skills such as farming, foraging, mechanics, and much more. As part of surviving, you will need to manage your character's needs, much in the same way as you would in a Sims game. Throughout the game, you'll get moodlets which appear letting you know the status of your character. This can range from feeling hungry, to feeling tired and depressed, and even severe boredom. Not doing so will negatively affect how your character performs, making them more likely to die while you're out in the field. There are tons of different systems at play here, and it's pretty crazy how immersive these can be. A big thing is also the fact that water and electricity in the world will eventually turn off, so that also gives you a hard date that you need to try and get yourself to be self-sustaining by. And honestly, this is pretty difficult. I think one thing to note is that the game tends to be hyper-realistic, which is honestly really cool, but maybe realistic to a fault at times. Here's just some examples of the realism. When you get wounded, you have to constantly make sure to monitor your wounds or you risk getting an infection. If you have frozen foods, you have to defrost them before you can use them in your dishes. You also need to make sure you turn off the oven or else you risk a fire breaking out in the building. If you break a window, you need to make sure to clear broken glass before you jump through or you'll cut yourself. Going out in the dark without a reliable light source is pretty much a death sentence. Each food has nutritional values such as carbs, proteins, fats, and calories, and these will affect how your character feels and how their bodies might develop. You can exercise to keep your character's fitness up, and they'll even be sore afterwards. Even so, I was a bit surprised to find that there were some objects that you would have thought you'd be able to interact with, but in the end, you can't really. Because of this realism, there can be some quite slow moments in the game. For example, you end up spending a lot of time reading books in order to develop skills, as well as organizing your inventory and your storage around the house. On the one hand, this can act as a really nice reprieve from constantly fighting zombies, but I can also see how this downtime might be a bit of a turn-off for some players. Another important thing to point out is the inclusion of a meta storyteller. Basically, the game will sometimes generate events to throw some curveballs at you. The most common event would have to be random gunshots in the distance. This can be used as a distraction for you to embark on quests, or it could potentially force you to move as zombies might begin to move on your position. I think it's a really cool addition to the game, and it constantly keeps things changing. So here I want to address some of the main issues with the game. I think one of the big ones would have to be the UI and controls. I think the UI in general just isn't the best and can easily feel a bit cluttered with all the menus and tabs you have to go through. Learning to properly manage all the tabs can be a bit difficult too, especially while you're dealing with zombies at the same time. Obviously with some practice it becomes second nature, and I personally picked it up pretty quickly since I've played other games that are like this, but I can definitely see how it can be awkward for people who aren't used to managing so many menus and tabs. The controls can also feel a bit janky at times, and your character might not always do what you want them to, and this can often lead to wasted time and even death. There's just sometimes some BS that can happen, especially in combat, and it can be frustrating to lose your character because of it. I even had a friend who, pretty much every single time we play, mentions how much he hates the game because of how easy it is to mess up and get bitten.
Oh god.
Oh, fuck that. That's so dumb.
A big thing is really just, I think, how the combat works. Real quick, the combat in PZ is very much about positioning and spacing, as you want to keep yourself out of reach and smack anyone who gets near you. You hold right click in order to make your character face a certain direction, but sometimes your character might seem a bit off from how you think you're lined up, and this can be a bit frustrating. It's entirely possible that the character's mood and whatnot might be affecting the aim, but even then, it kind of feels bad when things just don't go how you expect. Outside of that, there are some small things I would have liked, such as being able to share maps, as well as some quality of life improvements, but I think there are some mods to help address things like this. I also believe with the game's recent popularity, the devs are returning to update the game even more. This included a multiplayer update, which is awesome because honestly, this game is way more fun with friends in my personal opinion. They also announced plans to create NPCs in the world that you can interact with, which I think is an important thing they're missing at the moment. Finally, let's talk about some of the technical stuff. The graphics are not very great. Like I mentioned, the game is like zombie RuneScape. It definitely is not going to impress people, but I think maybe there's something endearing about the whole old school look of it. In terms of the sound design though, I think it's actually fairly well done. A big thing about the audio is the fact that everything works based on proximity. Your character can only hear up to a certain distance, and this works the same for zombies as well. I think the sound effects are really well done, and this is especially important given how important sound is to your survival. I say that there are some times where you might hear things coming from a seemingly wrong direction, but that could also perhaps be the effect of me being lost and scared and panicking. The music is also surprisingly good, although there were times where I wasn't always sure why they would play certain tracks, making me think that something was about to happen. Overall, I've enjoyed my time with Project Zomboid, although I personally feel like I would only ever play with friends and not really by myself. No, it's totally not because I'm scared. Don't be preposterous. While the game does have some rough edges and looks like something created in the 90s, I do have to say that the massive open world and sheer number of possibilities makes it quite an enjoyable experience. I feel like this is the type of game that some people will absolutely love and will invest an inordinate amount of hours into. I think there's a lot to like here, whether you like open world games, survival games, or even some role-playing. Me personally, I think $20 is a pretty solid price for PZ, especially considering the amount of time I can see people putting into it, but at the same time, because of the fact that it can feel a bit old and janky, I can see people not necessarily wanting to put $20 into it. I'm giving PZ a 3 out of 4. Again, I think it's a fun game, especially with friends, but it does have some issues which hold it back, and I personally didn't love it so much that I really wanted to play it by myself. But hey, that's just me. Have you tried PZ, and what'd you think of it? And of course, if you made it this far, I truly do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, as it really helps out my channel, and as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.